Spawn is on the hunt for a cure to vampirism, but even if he finds it, will he live long enough to use it? Let's find out in our review of Spawn number 353 from Image Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Spawn number 353 from Image. This issue is written by Rory McConville with script assist by Todd McFarlane, art by Adelso Corona and Daniel Enriquez, colors by J. David Ramos, letters by Tom Orzechowski, and the main cover A is drawn by Thaddeus Robeck. Before we dig in, let's recap what happened in the previous issue. We learned that Blood, who is the king of the vampires, was in negotiations with an emissary named Fixer, who works for the agency. The agency isn't too happy that Blood has been sending them vampire workers that are of, shall we say, poor quality, and the Fixer is negotiating with Blood to do something about it. Meanwhile, Spawn reached out to Terry to help him track down a mysterious new hunter that's running around town, getting in Spawn's way. The hunter appears to be a woman and appears to be wearing angel armor, but we don't know who she is, what she's about, what her name is, or where she comes from. That brings us to Spawn number 353. We get a prologue, which is a brief refresher on Eddie Frank. Through the dialogue and the narration, we remember that Eddie Frank is an angel who was bitten and turned into a vampire, so he's a hybrid mix. However, the celestial powers that be put some blocks in place to help him suppress his vampire side. With the outcome of the Heaven-Hell War, where the dead zone now surrounds the earth and all their powers from either heaven or hell are cut off, the celestial powers that be who put the blocks in place can no longer prevent his vampire side from coming out. And now Redeemer, Eddie Frank, has now become Reaper, who is a angel-vampire hybrid, more vampire than angel. We then catch up with Terry and Spawn as they're going over intel, looking at video recordings, trying to find out who this new hunter is and what the hunter is after, and whether or not they're going to get in the way of Spawn's mission to find a cure for vampirism. They deduce through the movements of the hunter that she's after Blood, and potentially to kill him. Spawn has to prevent that from happening, because we know from past history that Blood has seeded a lot of lies about what vampires can do and can't do and their limitations and whatnot. The overarching theory is that by killing Blood, that frees up all the vampires that he's sired and the bloodlines all the way down. However, we know that's not true. So if the hunter kills Blood, it may wind up either harming or killing Eddie Frank. And so Spawn has to stop her from killing Blood to save Eddie. Then that's why he's also looking for a cure rather than going right to the source. Then we cut back to Blood, who's at his estate in upstate New York, one of many. He answers a knock at the front door, and he's attacked by the hunter who's tracked him down. She stabs him with a blade, but it's just not any blade. It's a blade that's been covered in special blood and magical enchantments and all kinds of things. And so the blade is now doing its work. And even though Blood is the king of the vampires, it effectively kills him right there on the spot. However, the body morphs and changes into a vampiric demon, so it turns out that Blood is using shape changers to impersonate him in various locations around the globe, partly as a safety measure, partly also to get more work done. The hunter begins searching the grounds, looking for any clues for where the real Blood might be, and then she's attacked by Reaper and the real Blood, who show up to take her down. Instead of backing away or trying to flee, she leaps to the attack, but she's just no match for Reaper, who is now an ultra-powerful vampire, but before Reaper can cut her down completely, he's hit by a hail of gunfire from Spawn, who has now arrived on the scene. Now the odds are a little bit better, because Spawn and the hunter have decided to ad hoc team up to fight off Reaper and Blood, but they're still overmatched by a lot. They start to fight, they get their licks in, and it looks like the tide is about to turn, and Spawn and the hunter are about to be killed. Suddenly there's a big explosion in the middle of their fight. And what we see that from a distance, or at least viewing distance anyway, Fixer is watching the fight, and he launched a small missile into the middle of the brawl to try and break things up and give Spawn and the hunter an opportunity to escape. The diversion works. Spawn and the hunter have at least a brief moment of opportunity to run out into the forest and try and give them some distance. And there they take a moment to talk and explain to each other who they are, that they're on the same side, that they want the same things. They might be going about it the wrong way, and they need to skedaddle to form up a new plan to try and figure out what to do next. Meanwhile, Fixer reports what's going on to the agency, and we know from the Scorch title that the new boss of the agency is Jason Wynn. So let's switch over to talk about the technical aspects, starting with the character development. No one character gets the prime focus in this issue. However, a lot of what's happening here is meant to serve and support and clarify Eddie Frank's role in this whole situation now that we know he's back, and that Eddie's situation and condition is motivating everything that Spawn is going through. So on the one hand, it casts Eddie as a tragic figure because he's not in control of the vampire side of his body, and that vampiric nature is now putting him under Blood's control. And then it also elevates Spawn because even without his powers, which puts him at great risk, he's going through a lot to save his, maybe not friend isn't maybe not the right word, but at least ally. Moving over to the art, Corona and Enriquez's art looks amazing in this issue, given that it's basically a vampire-centric plot. The team's got an opportunity to do a lot of bloody stuff, a lot of gory stuff. The opening couple of pages, the prologue that explains how Eddie became Reaper, gets really gory. Lots of blood, more along the lines of true horror, what horror fans would expect out of a comic, rather than Spawn, which tends to straddle that line a little bit. So if you're a horror fan and you like your blood and gore, especially of the vampire kind, you're going to like this issue. If you're just a straight Spawn fan, there's still a lot of action and big Spawn and supernatural superhero type of developments to keep you satisfied. Let's talk about the pacing and structure. The comic moves at a really steady, brisk pace. Scene transitions are very smooth. And the overall issue is a good mix of information and dialogue with action and adventure. So it's a really nice balance. Generally speaking, very enjoyable comic to read. Plot structure, well, Spawn comics tend to not move the plot forward by leaps and bounds. That just seems to be the general nature of how Todd McFarlane set things up. But to McConville's credit, you get quite a bit of meat in this issue. You get background information about Eddie's situation. You get motivation clarification for Spawn. There are developments with this new hunter who is still a bit of a mystery. So there's some intrigue there that plants some seeds for anticipating what it might be revealed in the next issue or two. And then Blood is set up as a very formidable challenge to fight. On the downside, there's a little bit too much emphasis, or I won't say emphasis, not the right word. There's a little too much emphasis on Spawn's survivability. He has no powers. He has no ability beyond his physical prowess and his skill in fighting and weaponry. But somehow he's able to manage to escape and survive these very dangerous situations with ultra powerful characters. It's starting to get a little too hard to swallow. McConville makes it work here, but barely. So that's starting to become a little bit of a sticking point. Is Spawn is supposed to be depowered, but yet he's basically doing everything he would have done as Spawn without some of the fancy bells and whistles, and still coming out of it with surviving out of every attack that he encounters. I mean, in this case, he survived an explosion from a missile attack with a little bit of ripped clothing and maybe a burn or two here and there. It's a little bit too much. Switching over to the central themes of this issue, effectively, it's a classic hero's journey. Spawn is the hero. He's on a quest to save his friend, but he has to do it in such a way that he doesn't kill him in the process, because all the easy avenues involve killing. So he has to find the one avenue that doesn't involve killing, that will hopefully save his friend. And everything that's happening around him, either characters are supporting him on his quest, or in the case of the hunter, maybe taking actions that threaten to sabotage his quest. So it's a classic hero's journey from start to finish. So looking at the bigger picture, where does this issue fit into the greater context of the Spawnverse? Up to this point, it was a little unclear or uncertain what Spawn was doing, how it related to vampires, and what anything did that have to do with the Heaven Hell War. This issue sort of brings that home, because Eddie's condition is a direct result of the Heaven Hell War, and so that makes the Heaven Hell War's outcome establishes the conflict, and the consequences of the war now make Spawn's role as a hero that's been in place for many, many years much, much harder. So you have these two outcomes that are coming together to form the drama and the conflict, and it's working out pretty well. It is also possible that the solution that Spawn will need to come to fix Eddie's predicament may be to eliminate or dissolve the dead zone surrounding the Earth, which would have very wide implications for multiple titles. I'm not sure if that's where we're going to go, but that's possible. Final thoughts. What do we think about Spawn number 353? It's action-packed. Stakes are raised, no pun intended. It's gritty, it's gory, and it's a solid tale from start to finish. McConville unveils the motivation behind Spawn's vampire hunt in a satisfying way, and it makes it make sense. And it's sort of like, oh, that's what he's doing. Oh yeah, that's a big deal. You kind of get that reaction. And the art team's visuals are very good. You might even say bloody good, because they do give you quite a bit of gore in the opening prologue. Therefore, we can give Spawn number 353 from Image Comics an 8.8 out of 10. Want to know your thoughts. Are you following along with the Spawn series? And what do you think about the consequences, all these consequences that are spiderwebbing out and blossoming out as a result of the end of the Heaven Hell War? Want to know your thoughts down in the comment section. Otherwise, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned through the outro for the next review.